WCSM's General Store is recorded at 70X7 Studio. WCSM is brought to you by Chad's Express Lube and Car Care Center. Christine Flynn, your local Farmers Insurance agent. For Good Reasons Roofing, your local hometown roofing specialist. The A&E Group for all your technical needs. And by Sanders Insurance, your local independent insurance experts. And now, WCSM's crew.
Well, welcome to another edition of WCSM's General Store from the 70X7 studio with our producers. Mike told me to stop doing this.
Well, then you need to do it more.
But I'm going to do it twice every show now.
Yeah.
Mike and Carter, our producers behind the scenes, we appreciate them so much. Kurt is out this week, and but our top fans have not been out this week.
No.
Bill, do you want to read them, or
well, I
can
can
you
if
read
you
them?
want me to.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. It's your phone. I don't like handling
well,
somebody
they'll probably
else's.
go dead on us both.
Well,
Your phone, our fans.
Who's our top fans this week, Bill?
This week we got Fritzy Phillips on top, and then a buddy of mine, Ronnie Deckard,
Nice.
John Hooker, Jackie Ratz Evans McGinn, Alan Burr, John Baker, Rena Kay, Russ Fall, Dave Stapp, Jane Hanser, Diane Critchlow, and Robert Lutz.
There you go.
Is that John Baker, the mayor of
Yes.
Steinsville? Yeah.
Yes, yes,
yeah,
it
yeah.
is.
Yep.
Yep.
Loyal listener.
Good.
Long-time watcher.
Yep.
Oh, man.
Well, we've got a very special guest. We're going to get right into this because we want to make sure we get as much information out of this young man as we possibly can. Good friend of mine, just thrilled when I reached out to him to ask him if he would come on and do this show. AJ Bowlen. Everybody knows AJ. He's very well known in the area. Born and raised here, part of the Bowlen family, part of the racing family. Just one of our top realtors in town, just all around good guy. Also part of the Racing BS show on
Yes.
Your Country 105. You've been doing that for, goodness, has it been 10 years maybe?
I think since 2014 again.
Yeah.
Like we actually kind of started that back in 1995.
Oh, really?
On Friday mornings. And then it evolved from
I
there.
do
Hot
kinda
Rod
remember
kind of
that.
took it over,
Yes,
right?
I
and
do
then,
kinda remember.
So yeah, I think I've been back on it since 2014. So
Yeah, amazing. So AJ, I asked him to come in and do a segment with us because we're now racing season's really underway. I mean, NASCAR since mid-February, but local tracks are now up and running. Bloomington Speedway opening, and local race fans are now like geared up and ready to go. And I didn't know of anybody who could talk to us more about the steep history and tradition of the Bloomington Speedway. Has it been 100 years? Was it 100 years last year?
It was 100 years last year.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable, isn't it?
Isn't it? And there are very, very few tracks in the country that have been around for 100 years. Obviously, you think of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, right?
Sure.
I mean, that's one of
Yes.
them. Winchester Speedway opened in 1916. I think we counted up a while back. I want to say there's 5 or 6 that made it to that magic century mark, right? And the majority of the ones that have are not a privately owned facility. That maybe they're at a fairgrounds or
I
something,
see.
right? So
I see what you're saying.
Bloomington obviously is privately owned, and promoters lease the track to promote it. So yeah, this is year 101.
That's
unbelievable. Now they haven't raced every season.
Sure.
Obviously, everything's shut down. World War II.
Right. Obviously, yeah.
But still, it's amazing that it's been around that long. It's
Cool.
So just a quick little snippet about like the beginnings of the Bloomington Speedway. The current quarter mile dirt track, correct?
right.
Was it that same? Has the shape or length of the track changed?
Dramatically.
Oh,
yeah.
really?
So when it first opened in 1923, everybody's always called it a half mile. It was technically a 5/8 of a mile
okay.
track, and it went out beyond what is now turns 3 and 4, out where that little drainage ditch is, out towards all the new houses that
Yes.
we were just discussing.
Yes.
So,
Welcome to Bloomington.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, it was a 5/8 mile, and back in the roaring 20s, right? The automobile was gaining popularity. Indy, obviously, everyone saw how popular the Indianapolis Motor Speedway was. And so some local business folks got together. Nat Hill Jr., which is a very recognizable name to us locals, right? Was kind of the driving force. His father was president of the First National Bank at the time, and and they had a car dealership as well, College Avenue Motor Sales. And
no kidding.
So Nat was the one that said, "Hey, let's build a racetrack down here," and that's where it came from. Thankfully.
So originally it was a 5/8.
5/8, yes. And then in around like the late 40s, after it reopened after the war, a gentleman by the name of Diz Wilson, who a lot of local race fans will remember that name from out of Mitchell. Diz and another gentleman, Wayne Padgett, kind of partnered up to bring it back to life. And by the time they were all said and done making changes, it was the quarter-mile configuration that you see now.
Oh, okay.
Early on, it was kind of cool, though, because a lot of the cars that ran at the Speedway for the 500 would actually come down here and race. And maybe the same exact car, maybe they cut it down a little bit, shortened the wheelbase up.
No kidding.
But yeah, a lot of those cars.
Amazing.
Yeah. So there's some really cool history there that I don't think a lot of people really realize. Even some of the drivers, like there was a gentleman by the name of Hilton Crouch, I believe was his name, and he was said to be John Dillinger's getaway driver.
No
so
way.
he raced at the Bloomington Speedway.
Oh, that is awesome.
So yeah, there's been a lot of characters over the years.
And by awesome,
for
I
sure.
just mean really bizarre.
I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, it is.
So I mean, you just think about if it's a quarter-mile track now. So originally, that track then was twice as long as it is then, basically?
Basically, yeah.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah, and I don't know, I've seen some pictures from back in the day, and it wasn't quite as banked as what it is now. We all think of the high banks, right?
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, and you think about the cars they were running then, too.
Right.
On that big of a track, right? They obviously didn't have the technology that we have today, but I'll be honest, maybe that's a good thing.
Right.
I think that was back when, even really through the 70s, 80s, and into the 90s, more people built their own cars.
Blue collars could drive
it
race, own their own car and turn wrenches. And
exactly.
All that
Not everything was off the shelf. Not everything was built by a car builder. Like you built your own car. You maybe designed your own parts, or at least, finished making them, maybe, right? Now everything's off the shelf and extremely expensive, and very cookie cutter too, to a point.
Right.
So it's hard to differentiate.
Right, because used to, back in the day, it was how well you could drive and how good your chief mechanic was. For instance, Carl Kinzer, and do you know what I mean? Like they were set apart because not only could he drive, Carl, nobody could beat.
Like absolutely,
nobody could beat Carl. Even, do you know? But now they've leveled that playing field, like they want to do in all sports and in all things of life. It's
and
that
they're
equity.
Sucking the life out of it.
They are sucking
honestly.
the life out of everything.
I mean, they just are. Because back in the day, you had Carl Kinzer and Steve Kinzer, and you had Diz Wilson and Dick Gaines, and my dad and my Uncle Mike, and Galen Fox and Bob Kinzer, and that's the thing too. I know, and people, like, if you really look at the history, it's not just even the drivers on the racetrack, it's everyone that was involved. Our whole area, like, if it wasn't for Bloomington Speedway, how different would motorsports have looked?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, you've got not just the Kinzer family, but guys like Galen Fox.
Yes.
And that Galen was a Indy 500 crew chief and won a tremendous amount of races when he was partnered up with Sheldon. And, you got even guys that never really got away from here.
I mean, would there have been a World of Outlaws without Steve Kinzer? I mean, really?
Would it have been as popular?
Would it have been? Would it be a household?
Right.
Steve Kinzer really was kind of
right.
The catalyst, at least for that.
Yeah, I mean, you had the Steve and Sammy show, right? Sammy Swindell and that the good guy and the bad guy.
Absolutely.
Depending on whose side you were on is how you looked at it. But yeah, I mean, would that have been different?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And then you think back, like, what if Bob never started racing?
Yes.
Right?
Wow.
That started that whole Kinzer family. And like, that wouldn't even... My dad probably never would have raced. Like, my grandma was a Kinzer. So Dad and Sheldon were first cousins. So, like, a lot of things could have been different if Bob never would have decided to get behind the wheel of a race car, right? Yeah, and so I don't think people really understand, like, it's not yes, it's about the Bloomington Speedway, obviously, but it's about the whole community and everything that everyone has been involved with or in beyond here.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
That makes it even more cool.
Well, yeah, and I mean, like the 60s, the Bastons, Ari and Ez Baston,
Yep.
and then, you every decade, of course, had their, then your Bob Kensers and then your Randy and Steve Kinzer. And then, I mean, Jeff Gordon was in the what, late 80s, I guess, mid to late 80s as a like what? How old was he? Like 14?
When he
raced
came here
When
because
he
they
was
wouldn't allow
driving
him to in California.
Yeah.
So yeah, you look at everyone who has raced here, and so many have gone on to be household names. And
Chase Briscoe?
yeah, Chase Briscoe, Kyle Larson.
Yes.
Right.
Tony Stewart.
Tony Stewart, Dave Blaney.
Yeah.
And now,
Just-
of course, his son is
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
Ryan Blaney.
that's right.
Yeah. He's doing pretty good for himself. You've got, Ricky Stenhouse ran here. Ricky's won the Daytona 500.
Wow.
Just
they've
on
all
and
come
on
through
and
the
on.
Bloomington
Yeah.
Speedway at some point.
Yeah, exactly. So when you look at that list and you really think about who all has came through here, it's pretty amazing for a race fan to look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's really, really incredible. Now, you also drove 90s.
Yeah. 90s through the 2000s.
Now, but you grew up in the pits. Your dad was.
Oh yeah, my dad raced up until I was about 3 or 4. But I still, I was there every Friday night.
Yeah.
Right. My mom a lot of nights would take me and if she didn't stick around, she'd drop me off and then come back and pick me up when she heard it go silent. Right.
Right.
And I wasn't the only one. Like that was back
Sure.
a lot of kids.
It raised a lot of kids.
Yes, it
but
did.
it was safe and you were learning,
Right.
probably with your heads underneath a car hood or
Oh yeah, hanging out
changing
with
tires.
absolutely hanging out with whoever would let us hang out close to the race car, right? Or maybe help them change gears and be involved somehow, or maybe just some nights just sitting up on the hillside watching too, and just soaking it all in, hoping that someday, you get the chance to be out there with them. So
were you out of high school though when you started racing?
yeah,
And did your dad helped?
yes.
Was he
Yep.
highly involved in your racing?
Oh, yeah.
He was.
Yeah.
Did he tell you when you stunk and when you were good? Or?
Yeah, but yes, and like a lot of father and son combinations, like some nights were a little tougher than others, but
Sure.
he also, I knew he knew what he was talking about,
Sure,
right?
sure.
So, and my Uncle Mike was the same way, and Jim Brenniger. I mean, those guys were so good back in the day when Dad ran that I knew, like, even if I didn't like being criticized, I knew to listen.
Right.
And, I don't think I ever had anything happen behind the wheel of a race car that Dad told me to expect or not to expect.
Right.
That didn't play out the way that he said.
He said, wow.
Like, if I was going out to qualify, depending on where we were at in line, like he'd come over to the car and say, hey, go, run this line, stick it up in the cushion, whatever. And if I did it, it
Right.
worked.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So, you just got to know when to listen.
Right.
Right. But so yeah, heavily involved, like a lot. And that's the great thing about the Speedway, is the families.
Oh, for
right?
sure.
I mean,
Absolutely.
our family, like my cousin Steve Bowlen, won
Yes.
a tremendous amount of races there. When we grew up on Rockport Road, you had, Dad and Uncle Mike taking care of their sprint car out of our basement. You had Rodney Ritter next
Yep.
door to us, and Big Rod was still racing, and so he was getting his stock car ready. Down at the bottom of the hill, you had Steve Bowlen getting his stock car ready. It was just a cool way to grow up, and that's just our little corner of the world.
Right.
That's the great thing about the sport in general and about the community here that is involved with the Bloomington Speedway is the family connections and the time they all spend together and the friends you make.
Yeah.
Right. And the lifelong friends.
Yeah.
Even after you're not racing.
Yeah.
So
good. Yeah, well, and there's nothing like a good pit fight. I'm just gonna.
No, there's not.
I'm just gonna say it. Okay, because
Sometimes they don't let you finish, though.
I know,
right?
Let
That's it's like just
them
let me
work
get
it out.
Yeah, just let me get a shot in.
Just
right?
let it work it out.
Don't
Hey, stay close. We'll be back with more from our guest, AJ Bowlen, on the General Store after this.
For Good Reasons Roofing. The number 4, goodreasons.com. They want to be your local hometown roofing specialist. Whether it's hail damage, storm damage, worn out, just plain old damage, or maybe it's new construction. Whatever your 4 reasons are to have a new roof, their 4 good reasons are honesty, integrity, quality, and kindness. For Good Reasons Roofing. Give them a call, 812-360-4469. They will come and give you a free inspection and a transparent quote. You will be completely satisfied because the owner, Tony Pulliam, would not let it be anything less than your satisfaction. So look for them at forgoodreasons.com. The number 4, goodreasons.com. Or call them today, 812-360-4469. For Good Reasons Roofing, your local hometown roofing specialist.
Let your local Farmers Insurance agent Christine Flynn put her experience to work for you. Christine Flynn proudly serves Monroe, Lawrence, and Greene County families and businesses and is ready to review your existing policies or provide a no-obligation quote today. Call Christine Flynn at 812-822-2905 to get smarter about your insurance. Again, that's Christine Flynn at 812-822-2905. We know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two.
We are farmers. Bum, ba-dum, bum, 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 bum.
Underwritten by Farmers Truck Fire Insurance Exchanges and Affiliates. Products not available in every state.
All right, welcome back to WCSM's General Store with our special guest, AJ Bowlen. We're talking about the history and tradition of not just only the Bloomington Speedway, which is really kind of the catalyst for this conversation because there is so much history, 101 years in Bloomington. But kind of now we'll move into that leading into really kind of the racing world as a whole. So off camera, during the break, we were just talking about you got about that far away from being actually a professional driver. You had an accident at a Salem race?
At Salem Speedway in a late model. The next time I was behind the wheel of a race car was at Charlotte Motor Speedway in an ARCA car for part of our rookie test. And we were supposed to run that series full time that year, which would have been 2000.
And ARCA was kind of a stepping stone for Winston Cup or NASCAR.
Yeah. And at that time, they were actually...
Or the Busch Series or whatever.
They were still former Winston Cup cars. And the guy we were supposed to drive for at the time had actually been to Childress and Hendrick and had talked to him about buying some used equipment. And he had some sponsorship lined up, or so we thought. Paid the bill for us to go to Charlotte and got some laps down there for our rookie test. And then he fell off the face of the earth like some of those money guys do. But it was good to be that. I mean, at least we got close, right?
Yep.
Because we were talking off air, how many guys here just in our backyard, honestly, are every bit as talented, if not more so, honestly, and nowadays that everybody's just buying a ride, right? Than anybody you see or have ever seen on a Sunday afternoon. I mean, there are some really, really talented racers right here and it's always been the case that if you're good at Bloomington and good in central and southern Indiana, you're one of the best in the country. And that plays out that way year after year, even today. You see it in the UMP modified national points or the super stock points. You see guys here locally, they're in the top 5 or the top 10 or fighting for the championship. You see it with the guys in the sprint cars too, right? So, there's been a lot of talent here that either just didn't get the shot because it's always taken money.
Right.
That's nothing new.
Sure. We always called it, when Perry raced, it was the black hole.
Oh, it is.
I know we're not the only ones that made that joke.
No. I had another buddy that he described it like just drive down the interstate at 60 mile an hour and every mile marker throw a $100 bill out the window, right?
Have a swimming pool.
That's so accurate.
Yeah.
So accurate. But we were just talking about, you were close, and while I know I'm prejudiced or biased about Perry was a phenomenal driver, and I always felt like if he had chosen that instead of me and his children and having a family, I think he could have been a professional driver. He was a rookie of the year and a track champion at Bloomington Speedway and just was a fantastic driver. But the Barrows, Gary Barrow, I mean, Ernie. There just been so many really local
right
to
It just-
Bloomington,
right.
but also then so many that come into Bloomington to run this track. Fastest quarter mile is what they used to call it. I don't know. They still
yeah,
do.
they still say. I think every quarter mile says that.
Pretty fast
like
now,
the fastest
right.
quarter mile in the country. But yeah, I mean, you got guys like that we still watch on Sunday afternoon. Christopher Bell. Bell's won races here at Bloomington, right? You know, it has been a great stepping stone.
Yes.
You know, some guys, even though they had the talent, they just didn't want to pursue that. Right. They were comfortable running here on Friday nights, maybe going to Brownstown on Saturday, and just living their life. Because I can tell you, just, you know, I've kind of been involved on every side of racing now, right? From behind the wheel to the promoting and managing side to helping with USAC with the Silver Crown Series. And that life on the road is not
brutal,
what
isn't it?
everybody
Yeah.
thinks it is. It's not. It's like being a part of a circus.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, I talked to Andy Hillenberg a couple of days ago, and Indiana Andy Andy referred to Bloomington Speedway back in the day as his personal ATM. Like if he was broke and needed some cash, they'd load up the 85 car and come down here and win. You know, and Andy's another one that went on, you know, he's a 2-time ARCA Series champion, had a very successful driving school. He he ran some cup races, ran the Indy 500, did testing for guys like Davey Allison, Dale Earnhardt,
Wow.
Schrader. I mean, but, you know, Andy's been on the road doing this since he was in his 20s, and he's just worn out. I mean, it's great to say you race for a living, but people don't realize everything that goes into
The sacrifice.
They see the money and the fame. Not
They don't see the behind the scenes.
Yeah, right.
Just like the Bloomington Speedway. People roll in there on a Friday night. I think sometimes they think that gate just magically opens up,
Right.
and the racetrack's ready to go, and the food's in the.
Yeah.
There is so much.
Unless
to
you've
that.
ran a business, you don't understand the overhead.
No, my goodness, no.
Yeah.
No, I've seen, you know, social media. I think we all have our same, probably on
Also
the same
known
page
as
on that.
Hellscape.
Yeah. So, you know, you see a lot of complaining on there, obviously. And I've seen comments like, well, it shouldn't cost that much to get in. The dirt they race on doesn't cost them anything. Oh my goodness, you have no clue. Right? Like, and the work and the behind the scenes, even with people like Henry Bryant, that Henry's been down there since Mike and Judy Miles had it. And Henry still takes care of the racetrack, does the track prep. People have no idea the number of hours he's down there. People like Doug Van Deventer.
Oh, gosh. He's been there for years.
Yeah. And, you know, I think Doug gets maybe paid something on a Friday night, but if you look at the hours he's there.
He does it because he loves it.
And quite honestly, at the end of the day, that's really why any of us are involved.
For sure.
Right? You know,
At this local level, for sure.
Yeah. And without all those people involved behind the scenes, Connie Freeman was another, and we just lost Connie back in the winter. She ran the concession stand.
She's a bus driver. I know her.
Just a great person.
Carol.
And,
Yep.
you know, without all those people involved, Bloomington Speedway doesn't exist.
Right.
I mean, you know, thankfully Joe and Jill Spiker stepped up, took the lease over, and have kept it running. You know, thankfully USAC stepped up, took the lease over in 2019 to at least we did manage to keep the gates open that year. A lot of other things didn't go quite as smooth as we would have liked, but we accomplished what we wanted because we wanted to get it to that 100-year mark more than anything. Like,
Right.
Yeah.
you know, but when you talk about what it takes from a promoter's point of view, we're both good friends with Bruce Lear,
Yes,
right? And Bruce and Dan Roberts and Jack Craig, those guys had it for 6 or 7 years. And, you know, I'm obviously not going to share numbers, but I can tell you it was cheaper for those guys to make the decision going into 2019 to just pay the lease and not open the gate. They were going to lose less money doing that.
Wow. Than
if they would have tried to race. Like, and I think, you know, the way society's kind of changed, there's still a lot of race fans out there, but a lot of people can't even come to the racetrack like they want to. You know, maybe the son plays travel baseball and the daughter's playing travel volleyball and they want to come on Friday night, but they can't. Right.
Yeah, there's so many things pulling families in different directions and other choices and options. And the economy hurts, but people don't realize they complain. And I get it. Trust me. They complain about, well, I can't, the ticket prices are too high. How can you afford to bring a family of 4? Well, if it's too much for you, it's also too much for the Bloomington Speedway to operate.
It's tough.
Because their prices have gone up too. I think people think that corporations or businesses, especially on a local level, are trying to fleece people. Now
Right.
they're just gouging because they can. No, look above them. The people
Right.
that are
Like if
charging them more for paper products for the restrooms.
Yes.
Even. I mean, just
The hamburger they buy, the hot dogs, everything goes to the insurance for the facility.
Oh, that's
my
gone up.
goodness. Yeah.
'cause we had Chris Flynn in.
Yeah.
And she was talking about that. Whose dad was
Chuck
the Bloomington
Welch.
Speedway.
Yeah, and that's the thing. There's been so many great people. Chuck was awesome. Did kind of the PR role for Mike and Judy, and Mike O'Leary's another one that did a great job in that role. There's been just so many people involved over the years. Again, Mike and Judy Miles ran the track for, I don't know, from probably the late 80s till 2012, I think. And before that, Mike and Dennis Richardson were partnered up on it, right? And just back through the years, Dave Mitchell and his family, and just the Fox family, Lawrence and Clyde Fox, just so many local people that have played such a huge role in getting to the 101st season, right? And now you just hope it continues.
Well, and we know, before we wrap up the show, we'll kind of put a plea out there. We know it's tough, but we just encourage you at least one time this season, just one time on a Friday night, pick the Bloomington Speedway, because there are people, I think, that are new to the area who would like to see the Bloomington Speedway closed. I can say this is me speaking, not AJ or anybody else at the table. And if you're a race fan, or especially if you're a driver, you know that there's been a lot of discourse and complaints against the Bloomington Speedway. There's a lot of people that would just as soon like to see it close, and I'm sure the area raised and subdivision built on top of it. But so, if we could all just go to the Bloomington Speedway once, pick one Friday this season and just support this local treasure and try to help them stay open.
Yes, I agree. And obviously, there are more homes getting closer, right? And that's happening all over the country.
Sure.
This isn't just a Bloomington Speedway battle. And I can tell you, the phone starts ringing as soon as you start hot lapping with people wanting to know when you're going to be done on a Friday night. So you learn not to answer the phone if it's not raining or anything, right? Yeah. So, but I really wish that our entire community, and I'll say it, I don't care, like our city leaders, our county leaders,
Sure.
I wish they would recognize what that speedway means to so many of our local lifelong citizens that has been such a part of their life, right? And it's such a part of our community, and it brings so much to our community. You can't drive by there on a Friday night when there's a USAC show.
Oh, goodness gracious.
Or, whatever, a big show, and tell me that doesn't make a positive economic impact on our community.
For sure.
Right? Mm-hmm. So it'd be so nice if the entire community would see it for what it really is and help get that word out, right? And help
support it.
Support it and have it more in a positive light.
Right.
It's not even open every Friday
anymore
like it used to be. How many races? 8?
No, they've actually, this year they had 17 on the schedule, and they've already lost one to weather.
Okay.
So, and
maybe
that's
16 races.
Yeah.
So from April to
September, right?
So yeah.
Yeah. So it's not every Friday night, and that gets a little frustrating, I think, for all of us that
for sure
are a part of it or have been a big part of it. So maybe that mindset will change.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I hope so. I just would hate to see it closed. If the owners decide to sell and nobody else wants to come in, then it's run its course.
Right.
But if they're forced to close,
that's when
I have a problem.
Yeah, no, that's a different deal.
That would just stink for what the Bloomington Speedway has meant to so many of us.
Yeah.
Growing up and being there with families, like you said, building memories, or maybe your dad or your husband or brother, whoever.
Right. Somebody you worked with, whatever, that drew you down there, right? And traditionally, there's been a lot of families that's part of their 4th of July celebration.
Oh, sure.
Right? Because the fireworks show has always been so good.
One of the best fireworks shows in the area is at Bloomington Speedway. It always has been.
And so, a lot of folks would come just that one time. But it was, again, that's part of their lives. Like they look for, maybe they're not diehard race fans, but they look forward to that every summer.
Yeah.
Right? They bring their family. There's a dozen of them or whatever, and they come down and enjoy a night on the hillside. And that's the cool thing, too, with Bloomington. And, I've been fortunate to be to a lot of different racetracks around the country. And I guess I'm biased, too, because I love the place so much. But you will be very hard-pressed to find a place in a more beautiful setting.
Oh, it's so
right
down there.
And you're sitting on that hillside, and the infield's manicured, and the red clay, and you're watching
clay track.
and you're watching the non-wing sprint car come through 3 and 4 and down the front stretch and back it into 1. There's not a better place in the country to just sit and watch a race.
I agree.
I mean, there isn't. So
Agree.
hopefully someone's sitting here 100 years from now talking about their 200th year. I don't know what they'll be racing.
Right.
I don't know what the cars will look like.
Or whatever,
But
they'll be driverless.
you've got to, probably.
Yeah.
You've got to at least hope that'll be the case, right? So, hopefully everybody can get down there at least one night this
It'd be
year.
nice. If that's our challenge to you, is try to get to Bloomington Speedway one time, one race this season, and help keep that tradition alive and going. AJ, it's just been such a pleasure for you to join us. I would love to have you back, and maybe we'll have a conversation about IU basketball.
We can do that.
I know you love you some IU basketball.
You guys might run me off after that. I don't know. No, I really appreciate you having me on. It's been a lot of fun. I'd love to come back.
And real quick, before we wrap up, tell people where they can find AJ Bowlen as a realtor if you're looking to buy or sell a house.
Yeah, I mean, the best place to go for the contact info is just ajbowlen.com.
Bowlen.
Bowlen. Yeah.
Very good. Awesome.
Thank you.
AJ, thanks so much
Thank
for
you
joining
very
us. We
much.
appreciate it.
Appreciate
All right.
it.
If it's God's will, we'll be back in here next week for another edition from the General Store.